there's absolutely one thing that you can guarantee. If Celtic had not sold a defender in the name of Carl Starfelt this summer, Matt O'Reilly would have been sold. Guaranteed. I can guarantee it. If we had not sold Carl Starfelt already and Jota had left the building, you can guarantee that this board would have took the money for the big Dane. Brendan Rodgers revealed yesterday that the board and himself, Michael Nicholson had to convince the player to understand that his immediate future would benefit from sticking around at Celtic, even though that Leeds did come in with a 10 million bid for him and bigger wages. Brendan Rodgers obviously went on to say, he said, look, we lost Carl Starfelt, we lost Jota, and Cameron Vickers was going to be out for a while. I didn't feel that we could lose another one, but of course, that was on the player as well. If he really wanted to move and pushes for it, he could have went, but we had a good talk with him, myself and the board, and we basically convinced him that his immediate future lies here. Look, if he was going to go to Leeds, he could have went for more money, but he's got the chance of playing in the Champions League. He wants to play at the highest level. Matt O'Reilly, for me, is a player that can go on and do fantastic things in the game. Brendan Rodgers knows this. Brendan Rodgers is the type of manager that, and you can see the way that Matt O'Reilly's played over the last couple of months. Under Brendan, he has even came out and said in public that he's enjoying his life at Celtic. I can guarantee you, if we hadn't changed manager this summer, Matt O'Reilly would have been off. Matt O'Reilly would have jumped ship just as quick as the other ones that jumped ship. But he's stuck around. Rodgers admitted that, look, we need to be realistic. I would love him to be here for a while. The beauty of me coming back, the experience tells me that when players are at a certain point, he's in the third year of his contract now. I said to him at pre-season, I said, look, I can make you a better player. I can improve you as a player. But naturally what happens at Celtic, you want to improve and develop and sell the players on. He was in the third year of his contract. It was probably at that time where players are thinking to themselves, you know, I've done everything. I've won a double. I've won a treble. You know, I'm going into the third year. What is there left for me to do? I've played in the Champions League. I've played against Real Madrid. You know, I've got to those dizzy heights. And at 22-year-old, you know, he could have went and said, how many players have done it before from Celtic? Been lots of players that have seen the bright lights of down south and the triple their wages and the jump ship, and they never do anything in the game again. I think it's been really, really, really clever by Matt O'Reilly to stick around and have belief in Brendan Rodgers. First of all, he's had belief that Brendan Rodgers has said to him. He said, look, I am going to be realistic, but I can improve you as a player. I can make you a better player. I can make you a better player. I don't wish you out the door. He says, look, when I walked through the door, I said, I knew you were a player that I wanted to keep. And he convinced the player. I think that's absolutely fantastic for Celtic. Fantastic for us that he's going to sign a new deal. He was obviously told at the time, he said, look, let's get the transfer window out of the way and we'll give you an improved contract, which he'll sign. And it's weird to think that Matt O'Reilly's actually 6'3". He's coming onto a game. He's coming onto a game at Celtic. You know, he's got a lot better this season. It'll be interesting to see how he develops this season in the Champions League. First season in the Champions League is always going to be hard for any player, especially a player at 22-year-old. But then people are going to say, well, look at young Ben Doak that Celtic sold, 17-year-old, and he's in the first team at Liverpool. That's a conversation for a whole different video. And let's talk about the game for the weekend. We're obviously playing Motherwell, away to Motherwell. Obviously, there's going to be a change of keeper this weekend, thanks to big Joe Hart. And could this be the chance that Benji Siegrist has been waiting for? Could this be the chance? Will Benji Siegrist get the nod before Bain? This is what makes it a really interesting weekend. This is one of these weekends that you think, will it happen? Usually it's difficult because a goalkeeper, one, very rarely gets injured, so he rarely gets left out the first team. A keeper would generally get left out the first team if it's a cup game in the League Cup. We're not in the League Cup this year. We've been put out in the early rounds, which, when you look at it from a keeper's point of view, that's usually the games that a keeper gets to come in and gets to have that run in the Cup. We don't have that. Joe Hart getting red carded last week is probably a blessing in disguise for Benji Siegrist. if Benji Siegrist can come in and prove his worth and show the keeper that he is, that's if he gets the nod. Brendan Rodgers was talking about the keepers and talking about Joe Hart's situation at the press conference yesterday, and he did say, he says, look, he was asked about a succession of the keeper. We all knew that we needed a new keeper in during the last transfer window. It did not happen. And Rodgers was asked, he said, look, it's not just a keeper that we look at these positions. It's we keep looking at it every season. He says we're always looking ahead to see what players that we can bring in for any position, not just a goalkeeper. He was a bit non-committal with the fact that they are looking for a keeper. He wasn't giving anything away, which is quite right, because all that can then do is then push up transfer fees when people know that Celtic are sitting with money in the bank. So without Joe Hart this weekend, it's going to be interesting to see who gets the nod for the goal position. Who do you think will get the nod? Personally, I think Bain will probably get it, because Bain is the keeper that's going to be playing in the Champions League, and this is why my thinking's behind it. It's not that I don't want Benji to give his chance. I want Benji to be given his chance at Celtic. I think it's unbelievable how we brought this guy in, and he's nowhere near the first team. You can understand why Scott Bain is number 2 keeper, purely for the fact of the Champions League, and we need a Scottish goalkeeper. We need the Scottish numbers brought up. If we had enough outfield players that were Scottish, it would be interesting to see if Scott Bain would have been even given that new contract. There's a thought for food for thought this morning. And once we get the goalkeeping situation sorted out, I think it will be Bain, unfortunately. I think, and then Benji will be on the bench. Nat Phillips looks as if he's going to make a start this weekend. He was brought in, obviously, to cover the crisis in the back line, but he's been struggling with a sprained ankle. Rodgers in no rush to give him a sort of return for the European contest, but Liam Scales and Gustav, Gustav is not up there as one of the best defenders Celtic have ever bought, but he's a young guy that's coming through the system, and we all know that that's what basically it's in. So with Stephen Welsh still out, Rocky out, it's going to be interesting to see if Phillips actually comes in. Will Burnaby get the nod over Taylor? Alistair Johnson's a certainty to start this weekend, but will Burnaby be given a chance in the league? Burnaby is not in the Champions League squad, so you're going to go with Greg Taylor. Purely for that. It's going to be really difficult for Burnaby to get into the team this season, I think, and it's a worry, because when you bring players in like that, especially from South America, and Brendan said this as well, he said you've got players coming in from different continents where it's a slower pace of football. Scottish football is quite sort of hectic, and that's one of the reasons that I think Kieran Tierney, I think he'll stay in Spain, because it's a better level of football and it's a bit slower pace and it's a more enjoyable game to watch. But Brendan Rodgers did say players come in to Celtic and they're going from a slower pace of football, a more relaxed game of football, to this high-paced game that we have here in Scotland. And some of them struggle with that. It takes them a bit of time. But I think this weekend, Greg Taylor will get the nod over Burnaby, just purely the fact that it is all about getting the players game time, especially with the Champions League games coming up. And Tony Ralston, will he get his chance? Probably not. I think Alistair Johnson will still stay as the main player there. The midfield, tell me what you think about the midfield. I think Rio Hatate will start. Turnbull was the better player at the beginning of the season, but Rio's back into the fold, so he'll keep Turnbull out in the number 8 position. Matt O'Reilly, he's a starter. Callum McGregor, he's a starter. And then it's going to come down to whether Odin, Tomoki Iwata or Paulo Bernardo gets involved in the second half. I think it would be good to see Paulo Bernardo to get some game time, actually, because I think he's a fantastic player and I think he's somebody that we should be utilising just a bit more. And then you're obviously going to have Kyogo up front with Dyson. Will Lewis Palmer get a game? Will he get started? Or will James Forrest get another run? Because James Forrest's last game was obviously cut short due to the fact that the goalkeeper sent off. So you kind of feel for James Forrest. But will James Forrest be brought back into the fold just to get that bit of game time and get the game into his legs? It's totally unfortunate for James. You feel for him. A lot of players said that James has passed it. A lot of people also said that about Scott Brown when Brendan came into the team the first time. So and he was about the same ages as what James is now, funnily enough. So be careful what you wish for. So my team was going to go for Taylor, Scales, Gustav and Johnston, McGregor in the middle, O'Reilly, Hatate, Maida, and Palmer. I'm going to go in the nod for Palmer. I think that Palmer will get back in to the fold also, and then Furiashi, little Kyogo up front. Tell me your thoughts on that team. It is Friday morning. We'll be doing the live tonight. I have got my team out early. We'll talk about predictions. We'll talk about lineups. We'll talk about players. And make sure you join us for the live tonight. You have to be subscribed to be able to chat on the live, so that make sure you are subscribed. Watch out for the channel, and it will give you an indication what time we're going live. So on that note, have a fantastic day, Celtic fans all around the world.
Lit. Roll up to the party. Roll up to the party. Roll up to the party. Roll up to